Okay. In Zambia's construction industry, especially in copperbelt towns like Ndola and Kitwe, the following labor market functions apply. Labor demand QD equals 1020 minus 2W. Colleagues, who demands labor in the labor market? Who demands labor? Firms, yes. Businesses, yes. Businesses are the ones who demand for labor. Okay. So just like in the demand for goods, where there's an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded, here there's an inverse relationship between the wage rate and the quantity demanded for labor. Okay. When wage rates are high, it means hiring workers is expensive. So firms will be reluctant to hire workers and pay them high wages. If wage rates are low, it means the labor is cheap and firms now can employ as many workers as they want because labor is cheap. Okay. Then we have now labor supply. Who who offers the supply of labor? Who supplies labor? Yes, the people of the nation, basically. Yes, households, people of the nation. Yes, as basically everyone who works. Okay, but basically, yeah, the people of the nation. So for labor supply, there's a positive relationship between the wage rate and the quantity supplied of labor. Meaning, if there are high wage rates, okay, people are now going to want to work because they're saying we can be earning higher wages. So let's go and work because we can get higher wages. But if wage rates are low, people will be reluctant to work. Okay. Unless it's a means of survival, then you've got really no choice. But if wage rates are low, you'll be reluctant to want to seek that job. Okay. So here we need to determine the equilibrium wage and the quantity of labor. Okay. So here basically you just equate the labor demand function, the labor supply function. So here 1020 minus 2W equals negative 30 plus 8W. So here first want to tabulate the wage rate. So we put like terms together. So it's going to be 1020 plus 30 equals negative 30. Oh, it will plus 30 equals 8W plus 2W. Right. So 1020 plus 30, like get 1050. 8W plus 2W, that is 10W. So to get the wage rate, you're just going to say 1050 divided by 10 kwacha, or divided by 10. You get 105 kwacha per hour. This is the wage rate, 105 kwacha per hour. So basically, this is what people are getting paid in this industry. Okay, 105 per hour. Any questions? find the equilibrium quantity. So you can substitute this W, this wage rate equals 105 in any equation. Okay, let's substitute it into the demand equation. So QD equals 1020 minus 2W. So W we substitute it with 105. Okay, so 1020 times 105. I'm going to get 2 times 105, that's 210. So we're going to say 1020 minus 210, we get 810. Okay. This is the quantity of labor. Okay, 810 workers. Any questions before we move to the next part? Okay, if government enforces a minimum wage of 120 kwacha per hour, determine whether this creates an excess supply or a shortage. Okay, so the minimum wage, basically this is the minimum amount that workers must be paid. Okay. You can't pay them lower than that. All right. So what we just need to do is this minimum wage of 120 kwacha per hour, we need to just put it into our demand and supply equations. And we're going to see is the quantity demanded greater or less. Now, intuitively, when government puts a minimum wage, okay, and in this case, here, have you seen this minimum wage is 120. The initial rate that was being paid is 105. Now, government has put a minimum wage of 120. Is it going to be, do we think there will be a shortage or an excess before I do the calculations? Initially, the wage rate was 105. Government has now put a minimum wage of 120. So, for an employer, do you think you want to employ more workers? Or do you think you're going to want to keep more workers in this case here? It's become expensive now. Okay, so facing our demand function, let's see what happens quantity demanded by firms. So where there's W, just substitute it with 120. Okay, so 1020 minus 2 times 120, that's 240. All right, so 240, 1020 minus 240, 708. So as we can see, colleagues, initially when the wage rate was 105, number of workers demanded 810. Now the wage rate has gone to 120. Quantity demanded of workers has reduced because it's expensive for firms. Now, when we look at it on the workers' side, all right, initially, for example, picture this, you are unemployed, okay, and you find Or even let's say, okay, you're unemployed, and then you find that first the people are getting paid 105, then now you're hearing they're getting paid 120 kwacha. All right. Maybe that can now entice you to say, since now they're getting 120 kwacha per hour versus the 105 they were getting, maybe at least this 120 kwacha per hour is going to be, it will help my life. Okay. So we expect quantity supplied of labor to increase because with a higher wage rate, we expect more people wanting to work basically. More people want to work. Okay. So where there's W, substitute it with 120. Negative 30 plus 820 times 8 times 120. That's 960. Negative 30 plus 960, that is 930. Okay. So initially, okay, at equilibrium where the wage rate was this is 105. Okay, at equilibrium, remember quantity demanded and quantity supplied is equal. So at equilibrium, quantity supplied of workers 810. Now the wage rate has increased to 120. So now the quantity supplied workers has increased to 930, meaning more people want to get jobs or more people want to offer their labor. So here we have a surplus or excess supply of labor. Okay, because quantity supplied, number of workers want to work, is greater than quantity demanded. Okay, so we're going to have a surplus, an excess supply of workers or a surplus. Okay, because quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. Any questions? So then the next part, you've got a question? Okay, so 930 minus 780. So there's an excess of 150. Excess of 150 workers. 150. Number of workers. Now, which monetary term are we going to compare against 120 to see if there's a supply of excess? Jesus. No, basically, they're asking, when they say calculate the amount, they're implying this amount for the supply or shortage. Okay. Yes. So please do not multiply by 120, okay? Because these 150 workers, they are the excess workers, okay? They're excess. So you don't need to, none of them will be getting paid this 120 hour per hour. Think of those as excess workers. They want to work, but they're not employed yet. They're offering themselves for work, but they haven't yet got employed yet. Use a graph to illustrate the market equilibrium and the effects of the minimum wage, basically. So our graph is like this. We have our wage rate on the y-axis, quantity of labor on the x-axis. As we said, labor demand, inverse relationship with the wage rate, higher wages, less demand. Labor supply, positive relationship with the wage rate, higher wage, more supply. So initially, our equilibrium wage is 105, and equilibrium quantity was 810. Now, government implemented a minimum wage, which is the same as a price floor. Remember price floors from microeconomics? So this minimum wage, 120. Meaning firms cannot pay below 120. They have to pay 120 and above. All right. So basically, from this graph, we can even tell there's a shortage. I mean, an excess because where this 120 cuts the supply curve, that's the quantity supplied, which was, we calculated it as how many? 930. Right. Then where this 120 cuts the labor demand graph, that's the quantity demanded. Quantity demanded was how much? 78. Okay. So here, as I said, this region here, from 78 to 930, this represents the excess supply of labor.